Hello, folks. This is your host, Tammy Tuckey, and you are now listening to the Tiara Talk Show. We bring you rare interviews with the makers of Disney magic. Whether they be singers, actors, Imagineers, animators, they have all made their mark on the Disney name. Be sure to check out the show notes, other episodes, contests, our social media pages from Facebook to Twitter, and more on our official website at www.thetiaratalkshow.com. All guest opinions are theirs and theirs alone and do not represent the opinions of the Tiara Talk Show or the host. The Tiara Talk Show is not associated with the Disney Company. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. And from all of us here at the Tiara Talk Show, have a hoop-de-doo day. I'm excited to welcome this week's Tiara Talk Show guest, Kevin McNally, to the show. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, great. I'm very excited because I've been on a Pirates hype since the last movie came out, so it's finally great to have somebody on our show who's from the original movies. It must be amazing to have that legacy included with it, but before we even talk anything about Pirates, I kind of wanted to hear your inspiration into pursuing acting. You know, was it first television that kind of got you turned on to that aspect of performing in front of, audiences, whether it be on TV or through stage, or how was that process for you?
I think it was the stage that really interested me first. My father worked for a company, and in those days, the very young children of the employees were thrown a party every year. But when the children got a little older, I think maybe about 8 or 9, they'd be sent to a Christmas show every year. And I was so enthralled by, the colors and the costume and the fact that, people would perform live in front of you that it really inspired me. And it was really from that moment on I wanted to... I could see myself up on stage showing off with the rest of them.
And leading to your audition for Pirates of the Caribbean, sometimes I hear that they have group auditions where they want to have people work off of each other just to see the chemistry because, considering that you play Mister Gibbs, you and Johnny are always on screen together, basically. So there's a lot of chemistry that has to work off of from that. So was your audition just separate, or was it with Johnny or other crew members?
No, I wasn't even in America, actually. I was actually in London at the time celebrating my birthday, and I was having a drink in the garden with a few friends, and I'd completely forgotten I had this interview, and one of my friends said, "Weren't you supposed to go audition for a pirate film today?" And I said, "Oh, I forgot completely, but I've had a few drinks now. I really shouldn't go to an interview with a few drinks inside me." And she said, "Well, it is for a pirate. I don't think it really matters what state you turn up in, does it?" So I went along and put myself on tape, and I think maybe the director saw that what I was doing was going to fit with what he felt Johnny was doing. Although at that point, nobody really had any idea what Johnny was going to do with the part. So I think it was largely guesswork at the beginning. Well, the director had a rather good idea that when I arrived in Los Angeles, myself and Johnny and Geoffrey Rush and I think Jack Davenport, he said, "Why don't we just sit around and I'll read the other parts and Kevin and Jack can read some parts and we'll just read through the film a couple of times." So we started to get an idea of what each of us were gonna go for, and I seem to remember Johnny doing a little bit of the voice. But of course, you couldn't really appreciate the makeup and the costume and the way he was going to move in that situation. So that information came through to me slowly.
And Mr. Gibbs, he slowly has this character arc that I feel builds throughout all 5 films, because it's great to see that he is probably the only person that Johnny knows besides his own father that is very loyal to him, that will stand by his side. And so I wanted to know, what information did they initially give you about Mr. Gibbs, or did they say, "Here you go, let's see what you have to bring to the table, and then we'll go from there"?
Yeah, Gore was very much somebody who lets you, take it your own, make it your own. The only thing we worked out was there was, I appear at the beginning of the first film as a sailor, and then much later in the film as a pirate. And originally they were two different roles, but I think it was Gore felt, well, we can't start the film with a character and never see him again, and then have a very important character not appear till about, nearly halfway through the film. So the writer then came up with the idea that the man at the beginning of the film was so terrified of pirates that he worked out that there were only two ways he could stop being so scared. One was to become a drunk and get himself thrown out of the Navy. And secondly, to become a pirate. If he became a pirate, he wouldn't have to be frightened of them anymore, which I thought was a brilliant idea. So suddenly I had these two roles crushed into one, which was an exciting thing to happen when I got there.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned with the drunk portion. You had that scene where you're with the pigs, because
Yes.
that's in the original attraction. So how many
That's
days
right.
was that shoot?
Well, it was a very, very long night shoot because naturally the pigs, just like everybody else, were very excited to be in a Disney feature film and refused to go to sleep. And I ended up lying with them for a few hours, singing them lullabies, trying to get them to go to sleep while they shot other stuff. And it got very uncomfortable by about 3 a.m, particularly considering the consistency of the mud that I was lying in and what it was made up of. But it certainly got me right into character, that's for sure.
And the research with the actual objects that you're using, the swords and the guns and the cannons, what is it like to get these items? And some of them I read that were real. So what was it like to experience working with these items, and also being safe and careful with them?
Well, we have armorers who are very careful about the way we use them. But I've worked a lot with guns and munitions in different shows, but I had to, firing flintlocks is very exciting. You get that lovely pop of the gunpowder, and it was particularly exciting as well towards the end of the first film. I think it might be the third, I can't remember. But when myself and Mackenzie Crook and Lee Arenberg were firing the cannon and loading all the forks and knives and even my drinking bottle into it, so that was huge fun. It's just like playing pirates, but with really good toys. I'm like most people in the film. I'm a terrible sailor, and we would be out at sea, all day, every day for weeks, and we've got about 100 people on this ship and 2 porta potties. It can become quite a miasmic environment. It wasn't pleasant, but I tell you what was very good about it is when you're on a ship and you're out filming, there's nowhere to go. You can't keep running back to your trailer. So it was on the first film particularly, it was a very good bonding experience between everyone, because you just had to lay there on the deck and sun yourself and wait for the next shot and go and chat to people and get to know people. So retrospectively, it was a really great experience, and I think made us into a real team.
And I love how they're bringing more of the original crew members from the first and second film and the third film back, because there was kind of like that little splice of time for the fourth. And the only 3 people that have been in all 5 films are, of course, Johnny Depp, Geoffrey Rush, and you. So since all of you appear in all 5 of these films, what memory sticks out most between the 3 of you? At least shooting scenes or, off set and doing something else?
Well, first of all, let me correct you. There are 4 people in all 5 films because you're forgetting the monkey. Well, one great moment for me was in the 4th film where I had, I'd worked mainly with Johnny and I was sort of scared of Barbossa. And then in the 3rd film, he became the captain of the Black Pearl, and so he sort of became my boss for a while. So I got to do scenes with Geoffrey, which is great because I adore him as an actor and as a man. And then on the 4th film, we had a scene when all 3 of us were together, and I shall cherish that moment, really, particularly as now we've done the 5th film, and, we're still the only 3 people to have been in all 5 films. So that was a great moment for me.
If there were to be a 6th film, and I keep crossing my fingers for you guys, what would you like to see for Mr. Gibbs himself? Because a lot of people typically think he's after the gold, but I don't know. Is there something more that he might need within the next film?
Yes, I'd love to. I'd love for there to be a 6th film too. I always have lots of ideas at the end of each film. I know at the end of the third film, I thought I had a great idea that the fourth film should start with me having gone off with Scarlett and Esmeralda, is she called? My two very good friends, Vanessa and Lauren. That we should start a pub together. And although everyone was envious that I, was sharing a pub with these two beautiful women, they were driving me absolutely crazy and drove me back to sea again. As far as this one is concerned, the ending was so open that really anything could happen. But I think it's about time that Mr. Gibbs had his own ship. I would say that. I mean, it's interesting. I would really, if we did another film, I think it's time that we had a female protagonist in terms of the enemy of Jack. I mean, we had it a little bit in the fourth film, of course, with Penelope Cruz. But to actually have the baddie as a woman, I think would be terrific.
And before we end our interview, I'm such a big fan of Phantom of the Opera, and I couldn't find anything of you talking about it. So, you playing Joseph Buquet, what was that experience like being killed by Gerard Butler?
Well, it was wonderful, really, to be involved in that, because I'd never really been in a musical before, and it was so lavish and so huge, and the music's so inspiring. And I had a wonderful... Sounds stupid to say, but I had a wonderful day being hung, which I really enjoyed. There was an interesting moment when they wanted me swinging, twirling on the rope. And of course, when you turn around with your eyes open, trying to be dead, your eyes tend to flick from one thing to other. It's a very hard thing to stop yourself doing. So we came up with all sorts of things. And then we had one of the assistant directors running around in a circle holding up a pen that I could look at. But that was so funny. I just kept bursting into tears of laughter seeing this person running around holding up a pen like a tour guide, But it ended up working. It was a rather effective scene in the end.
But do you approach a character for a stage play differently than you do for a film?
No, the only real difference is we have as a group, as a cast, we have, well, in my case here, 5 weeks to explore and get the play right so that we can do it all in one go from beginning to end. The process in film is plainly, you have to do much more preparation on your own, yourself, and doing the pieces much more fragmented. But essentially, you want to turn up in front of the camera as well prepared as you turn up in front of an audience, yeah.
And our listeners, I will post links below in the show notes where you can go ahead and follow Kevin on Twitter. And not only that, I have 3 Disney-themed questions I ask every guest who comes on the show. And I call them the Fab 3. So the first one is the Donald one, which is, as a child, what Disney film was one of your favorites to see in the movie theater?
Wow. Well, I grew up with some amazing Disney films. But I think probably the one I was old enough to really remember and beg to go back and see a number of times was Jungle Book.
And our goofy question, what Disney character, besides the ones in the Pirates films, do you think would be your best friend if you met them in person?
My best friend, I think it would be, it would be Buddy Hackett in The Love Bug. I thought he was so funny, and I wish I'd got to know him, but I think Mister Gibbs and Buddy Hackett would be just great together.
And our final question, our Mickey question, if I asked you to name any Disney song at this very moment, what immediately comes to mind?
I think it's I Want to Be Like You. You, I love it.
Thank you so much, Kevin. This has been such a treat, and I really do hope we may get to talk more about Pirates later. Hopefully, there's a 6th one announced. I'll be keeping tabs. I hope so.
All right, my pleasure.
Take what you can. Give nothing back.